Mangu local government alone, we buried at least 15 people so far. As at this morning, in Bokos local government, we are counting not less than 100 corpses. I'm yet to take stock of that of Barkin-Ladi. Most of the communities affected in Barkin-Ladi share border with Bokos local government. And at the last count also, we have not less than 17 communities that were completely touched and brought down by these bandits and criminals. When people are dislocated from their villages and they have to run for shelter, now we are struggling to provide shelter for these people that have been displaced and dislocated from their communities. If they stay away from those communities for a sustained period of time, the terrorists would come in. As I'm talking to you today, in Urium local government, in Barkin-Ladi local government, schools have been occupied by these terrorists for almost a number of years now. We have not less than 64 communities that have been displaced, and the lands have been taken over by these marauding terrorists. So if this pattern continues, then you can see the trajectory that at the end of the day is about pushing people out of the land, taking it over. And then we need, therefore, to be able to come up with a program. And I will be talking with Mr. President on this. We need to have someone the political will to give instructions to the security agencies that they must protect the territorial integrity of Nigeria and even the internal integrity of our land boundaries. There are ways of acquiring land, not through violence, and we must be able to resort to constitutionalism in dealing with these issues. People who want land on the plateau are free to approach communities and negotiate and settle in those communities. I don't think people will refuse, but where they resort to violence to take over those lands, you would be sure that this is a time bomb, because it will reach a point where the people will react, and then we're going to have a large-scale conflict.
And that's where we'll start off from the security situation in the country, particularly that painful incident in Plateau State, Barkin-Ladi and Bokos. Joining us to have this conversation virtually is Group Captain Sadiq Shehu, who's a retired Air Force officer in the security sector reform and defense expert. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you.
Also joining us virtually is a strategic security researcher and security consultant, a Nonviolence Advocacy Network Canada, Reverend Laddie Thompson. Thank you for joining us, sir.
The pleasure I wish was mine.
Let me start up with you, Group Captain Shehu. This incident on the plateau, it's gotten everybody across the country is talking about it, and it's a sad one. Over 100, coming from the governor's statement yesterday, over 100 already dead, and the numbers rising, and it's being reported as of today, 115 deaths toll. Yesterday, we was actually said that this is one incident too many, and it appears that nothing is being done enough to end this matter. But the governor, in his statement yesterday, in his submissions, talked about schools being occupied. That means this attackers, bandits, are in a particular location or are in certain particular locations, and it looks as if nothing is being done. Would you call that political will?
Hello.
Yes, Captain Shehu, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. First, again, I have to condole with the people of Plateau, all those that lost lives and property. Having said that, an Igbo proverb says that even while we are crying, we should be able to see the road. This one has happened, and it has come, on the back of several other incidents that happened, not only in Plateau, all over Nigeria. I have listened and I have followed diligently since this story broke of this Plateau attack precisely on the 24th. That's when we started hearing about this story. But from interview with the acting local government chairman and people living there, we learned that the attack started on Saturday the 23rd in the night. Now, why am I trying to establish these timelines? Even in the way the story met us, even the way the story met the Plateau state government and the military, we are seeing that there is something we are not doing right. What is that? Passage of information, early warning, intelligence. The attack started Saturday in the night on 23rd. It was only on the 24th, this can be checked verifiably, that the governor and the spokesman of the military in Plateau, it's only on Saturday, that is like one day after that we're hearing from them that there was an attack in a village called Mushu in Boko's local government, and the statement they gave as of that time, 24 hours after, was that 16 people were killed in Mushu village. What did we learn later in the day? We learned later in the day that the attack has spread to Bariki local government. The attack has spread to about 17 to 20 communities, and the numbers are 100 plus. What am I trying to establish here? To me, I'm talking frankly and honestly, it means even the Plateau state government does not have a communication mechanism. The military themselves do not have the information mechanism between the local communities and the security agencies or the state government, which should be our first alert to act. That is one point. I've also listened to the governor and federal lawmaker from that area. You know, they stopped short of saying, or rather they even said that the response of the military was very slow. In fact, if one talk honestly, they almost stopped, short of saying either the military colluded, connived, or ignored. Now, certainly there was a late response. But as an analyst, what we should like to find out, why is the military response or the security response always coming late after the event has happened? Why? There could be several reasons. Could it be the numbers are not on the ground? I'm just going to paint a general picture. It could be numbers are not enough. It could be deployment is not made, judiciously to areas that are known to be flashpoints. It could be, and everybody knows that during festive period, whether police, whether DSS, whether military, you will find them normally, their alert state is down. In fact, in most of this festive period, you have our security, with due respect, all they are after is how they are going to get Christmas gift from people passing. In such a relaxed atmosphere, somebody can pass with guns, somebody can pass as long as he can tip people on the highway, tip people on the, all these are issues. Now, if the governor, as of 24 hours, and the spokesman do not know that these attacks have rampaged areas, not only one area, then we have a problem. We have a problem of early response. We have a problem of early warning between the communities. The communities are the first to feel the impact. It should be from them that whether army or state government or police will get information that we're under attack. I also have the governor confirming that they received a distress call. I think if we want to get to the root of this problem, we should draw a timeline. When did the state government or any other security agency receive a distress call? From that time they received a distress call, what was the time that the first security responder arrived at that place? If we have a long period as we're seeing now, then we should interrogate. No. Do we have enough perspective?
Group Captain Show, if I may come in, Group Captain Show, there is something that looks like, as you said, it looks as if it's been consistent. But that matter of when the governor said schools and amenities are being occupied by these terrorists, doesn't that raise some concern? That means that they are in one place or they are in certain places.
Yes, a very big concern. I'm alarmed. I'm using the governor's word. I just heard him. For several years, he said. For several years, bandits are occupying schools and nobody has done anything. I find that inconceivable. Several years, what the governor said. Several years, not just before Christmas or 2 days before Christmas. Then, in all honesty, we are moving towards a failed state. If I underline, if this statement by the governor is true, that bandits are occupying schools for several years in Plateau State, not in the border area of Nigeria, then honestly, we're in a real problem. But I would like the president has weighed in. But what I want the president to do is to find out what each stakeholder did from the moment this attack was, was signaled up to the last point, including this claim that we have bandits occupying schools for several days in Plateau, and yet nobody did that. Nobody did anything. It is really, really sad and bewildering.
Let me take this to Reverend Ladi Thompson. Reverend Thompson, you're a strategic security researcher, and you've done this over time. What the governor talked about, occupying schools and amenities for several years, paints a picture of negligence or planned neglect, some would say. But he said something. He talked about political will. Is it political will that is needed for the security operatives to rout people that are occupying a place illegally?
Let me say that the governor is a very brave person. The governor is a very brave person for the statement he has made. Why do I say this? Anybody who has been following what has been going on in Plateau State, but in Nigeria for about 20-something years, knows that, frankly speaking, judgment has already fallen. Justice is very far away. Truth has fallen in the streets. This is not the time for anybody not to be politically correct. Anybody who is not politically correct is making himself a target. So I want to commend the governor because even between the lines, the little he has said, the truth is this. It's not just schools. There are at least 112 villages in Plateau State that have been occupied, and the names of the villages have been changed. If the TV station will send its crew into Plateau State, the indigenes there will talk to you, and they will let you know that at least 112 villages have been taken over and the names changed and the indigenes have gone. And what the governor said is true. This does not start in this time. So if we want to find a solution to these things, we're going to have to step up our architecture of thought. Not only that, we're going to have to step up on courage. Now, I'm talking about the president and look, what exactly is different this time that has not always happened? What promises are being made that have never been made? Now, the reality on ground is this. The diagnosis is wrong. I don't know how many decades we're going to say this on TV and people are going to continue to die. Have you forgotten that wherever poverty has been weaponized, as we are going through this right now, those who are planning these things know that Nigeria's memory is short. By the month of February, by March, a lot of news will have come. This will be, something past and forgotten. So if we're really serious about getting to the root of these things, let's not even look at this incident. The modus operandi has always remained the same in Plateau State. Look, like my friend was saying earlier on, the attack started I was talking to, just after they buried those in Yanga today, the 12 people who were buried, 6 bodies were taken away to their communities. Look, I was talking to some of the people who had gone to help to conduct the burial, keeping notes on what is on ground. First of all, the figures that we are quoting are small compared to the real statistics. And if we don't have the courage to face up the truth to the truth, how are we going to really solve this problem? Look, the attack started about 6 p.m. Up on the way till 12 at night. It went on, continued the next morning. And we don't have the courage to face up to the fact that, as we have said to you, we are fighting a hydra. It has a local face, it has a global face. I won't mention the name of the government in Plateau State. So years ago, I was in Plateau State when troubles were in the heat. And I remember I was asked to address the cabinet in a closed meeting, a security meeting. And when I had the cabinet in, this were indigenes and all that, and I was asking them, what do you think is going on here? I commended them for their courage. But by the time we finished that session, and the governor too came in to come and listen to the reality of what was going on in their area, they had to admit that this is much bigger than Plateau State. These things that we are talking about here has a global portion to it. You are talking about how that this time around, listen, the letters that this attack was going to come had been sent by the 15th of November. Sorry, yes, by November, the letters had come, and they had already said that they were going to start the attacks by the 15th of December. And there was a promise that this was going to be the mother of all atrocities. Ask anybody in Plateau State, they will tell you what I'm telling you is truth. Now, is this the first time? No. Let's mathematize this thing. Go back to the Nikitobi report as far back as then. Begin to take note of some simple things here and there and decide for yourself whether we are really serious that we want to put any value to the lives of people who are being killed year in, year out, not only in Plateau. Now, what makes Plateau, precious is this. These things have gone on northeast, northwest, but it is glaring in Plateau because of the makeup of Plateau. Now, if we can get it right in Plateau, we will get it right in the whole country. But the question again is this. Do we have what it takes to realize that we have a systemic problem on ground? Can you go back and remember that in the days of the Nikitobi report, there was a federal panel, there was a state government panel, and that you could even see the dynamics already, the tensions, for the fact that even many former presidents in this country have told you that even in their cabinets, they have the people who are upholding this hydra. How long will it take us to stop this charade and the crocodile tears year in, year out, of pretending that we care and as if we have something we want to do when the will to get anything done has not yet been put together? Nikitobi report, if you remember very well, the commissioner for police in the Nikitobi report was, frankly speaking, it was there in black and white. The recommendation was that he was to be sacked with ignominy. The question you ask yourself, if you want to admit the truth to yourself, is this: how did that same person end up as Inspector General of Police a few years later on? As a commendation for the work he had done in Plateau State.
Reverend Thompson, just to continue on that same wavelength, if all that is needed, according to the governor, is the political will and an instruction, using his words now, to the security agencies to defend the territorial integrity and the internal integrity of the land borders, why do you think that political will is still lacking, particularly now that we have a change in administration at the federal level?
Now, the truth is this: if your enemy plans for you for 60 years and you want to respond in 30 minutes, you are probably not going to get it right. It goes beyond the political will. I'll tell you why. There must be a young man in Plateau State, if I remember his name very well, was Booker Samson. When they entered their compound, this was before 2008, they slaughtered the majority of their home was killed. His father's blood was on his body, was how he escaped. I remember in his case that he was telling me this personally. He scaled the wall, and when he scaled the wall, he saw what he thought was the Nigerian army. And he ran towards them shouting for help. They opened fire on him. And then he ran back. Unfortunately for him, he ran into the genuine Nigerian army later on. When they ran among the Nigerian army, those people were not afraid. They were still chanting songs. They still wanted to come and fetch him out until the commanding officer declared that he would open fire if those people dared to step. Actually, it wasn't the commanding officer. It was just one of the regular soldiers in there who said, if their commanding officer would allow this to happen, what am I saying? You are dealing with a very clever hydra that has been working on dividing the forces. You heard about what happened with the police force? Are you thinking that they haven't been working on the Nigerian army? Where were you when the Nigerian army began to have policies that when they capture, remember in those days they captured Boko Haram terrorists, and then they would claim they've been debriefed, they've been this, and they are now joining the Nigerian army. And people rationalized it. Where were we when all that was happening? Now, let's be very frank. Every army depends on the chain of command and the word of command. What happens when you allow a hydra that understands that to infiltrate the ranks? If I want to sit down here and I give you 10, 12 situations that have happened through the years in Nigeria where there's an obvious disregard, don't let me talk about what is going on in Plateau State right now. I want to say that it's a good thing that General E.A. Absalam has the trust of the people who are there, right? But we still need to check the chain of command, because at times when he has given an instruction down the line, we're talking all the way down to the sector commander and all that, we need to go in and check loyalties. So what am I saying? One of the things I've said for the past 20 years is this: what you are dealing with is a hydra, is a shapeshifter. It is something that has ideology backing it up. It is masked under religion. I've told you so many things that this thing does, and if you are really ready for it, you need to be able to gather. In Nigeria, you put together about 12 people. I mean, right now, this is where I miss the late AVM Bamfa. He is one of the people who, at least I know, who understood thoroughly the global perspective of what was going on in Plateau State, because he had the opportunity to see the workings, from the global perspective. So I really commend the indigents of Plateau State. They've tried. They tried their best, but honestly, it goes beyond the political will. Because even the president himself, to stay where he is, there are dynamics. We have a systemic problem in Nigeria. If we can't face that, we're going to keep burying young people. And for how long?
Now, you've used the word yet again, it has a global perspective to it. When you say that, are you suggesting that we have a fair knowledge of the perpetrators of this attack? And if the target is land displacement, who are they and where are they getting the help that they seem to be getting to enable them perpetrate this quantum of attacks?
Honestly, this is neither the time for the place for us to begin to discuss the obvious. We're dealing with something that's been globally documented that has a local face. And we also know that the local face also has its modus operandi, including the use of media as a force expander. We all know that it is asymmetrical warfare. We know that it uses hybrid threats. We know it is opportunistic. We know these things. Have you forgotten that December, was it 2011, the Madala Christmas Day bombing? Was it not from Lagos that the man who captained that bombing traveled from Lagos 2 days before to Niger State then? While we pretending as if we don't understand, this thing is as simple as ABC right now. Practically all countries in the world have come to grips with it. Why is the titan of West Africa Nigeria? Why are we pretending as if we don't know the obvious and trading away politically what we know that at the end of the day is a displacement sequence? Listen, what is going on in Plateau State is nothing less than a genocide. Why it can go on like that is because the foreign exchange value reflects the life of the Nigerian on the global level. Don't forget that the modus operandi you saw this time was that the perpetrators were even taking videos. Have you forgotten what happened on the 7th of October this year in Israel? Are you saying that we cannot begin to concatenate and easily see how these things work together? Let's be very frank. If we are ready to correct the systemic flaws in Nigeria, it won't take us 3 months to wipe out this menace out of Nigeria completely, reduce it to an irreducible minimum, and set a pace for the safety of Nigeria, West Africa, and of course, our continent, which is, where this is still going at the end of the day.
Very weighty submissions there, Reverend Thompson. Let me bring some of what you have said to Group Captain Shehu now. Captain Shehu, Reverend Thompson has, made quite a few points, particularly about failure of intelligence and suggesting some form of complicity where the chain of command is concerned, particularly with the military. I'd like you to address that. And while you're also addressing that, Reverend Thompson also reiterating that notifications for this attack have been sent as far back as November 15, which we're also reading in the papers today. And you may also want to tie that, with the governor's concern about the terrain being difficult, for security agents to be able to respond. My, concern about that is Mangu, Bokos, and Barkin Ladi are flashpoints. This December attack is not the first time. So why would the terrain be unfamiliar to security forces? Perhaps you want to address, these issues.
Thank you very much. Permit me first to state the caveat that whatever I'm going to say, I'm talking from an experience of 27 years military service, having trained with the Nigerian military, and also having trained with other armed forces. With respect to complicity, to me as a retired military officer, that is the most disturbing aspect of this, incident. First, I would like to say that the Nigerian military as a whole is one of the strongest binding instruments that we still have in Nigeria. If it is now being accused of complicity, either based on religion, ethnic, or whatever affiliations, it is very sad. But I would like to respond to the Reverend Thompson that the military, I know, the military unit, when you say military, it starts from a section, which is like 10 people, then a platoon of about 30 people, then a company of 100, up to a battalion, up to a brigade, up to a division. In each of these units and subunits, there is no unit that is completely composed of either Yoruba people, or Igbo people, or Hausa people, or Fulani people, or Christian, or Muslim. So if somebody tells me that a certain unit, all of them will agree with all the disparate identities to go and attack a certain listen, I will find it very, very difficult to believe because of the composition of how our military is. It has an inbuilt mechanism that if somebody wants to be mischievous, it will be very difficult because, for example, in a unit of such composite nature, how do you convince all the officers and men in that unit to attack? That is just one issue I want to say. I find it very difficult to believe. I find it unbelievable. Now, the other issue raised about early warning or early report that was released since he said November, I am not aware of that. But if, I underline if such is true, then again, the problem has moved not only on the military or security agencies to the political masters. Because if what the Reverend is saying is that this message has been sent and it's available to everybody, then if something was not done until we approach the period of this festive period where it was forecasted that an attack will be done, then again, that's why I said whenever I'm discussing this thing, there is blame to go around to almost everybody, not only the security people. I don't know how true that is. I am not aware of that this thing, but I will not say that what he said is not true, but I'm not aware of it. The other issue of terrain, which the governor, yes, terrain could be a factor of accessibility. But when you are deploying your troops, when you are looking for equipment for your security forces, terrain is one of the factors that you should look at. And you also mentioned that even while you are deploying your security forces on the ground, there are areas of non-flash points. It's not the whole of Plateau, to my own understanding, that are flash points, apart from minor skirmishes. So if you have areas that are consistently, being challenged by this crisis, especially with this letter, which Reverend Thompson said was circulating a very long while ago, then I think you should solve the problem of terrain by putting enough resources, that's human resources, your boots on the ground, to near as possible to the place where you expect the problem to be. We do not see that because if we, from the reaction time, what we are seeing is that it took a long while before the security forces are attended. Again, he raised the issue of many communities that have been taken over and their names changed and there are villages that are known. Again, if this is true, then it's a failure of the government. Again, I'm not aware of it, but again, if I said it's true, if what he said is true, there is a failure of government because you cannot have people. Certainly the problem of the
Well, Group Captain, we need to go on a break now. Of course, we'll fix the connection issue. We seem to have lost audio and video connection with you. Still a lot of questions to raise. Arrests have not been made. Some of the issues the governor spoke about yesterday, that looks like in the previous administration, the sentiment which a lot of people had was that these assailants, terrorists, had some sort of official backing. These and more we'll raise with you and Reverend Ladi Thompson when we return in a moment. Please stay with us.
It was another opportunity for the Chief of Army Staff to express his gratitude to troops who have been holding forth in different operations here in Plateau State. The Army Chief is represented by the Commander Corps Artillery, Major General Cyril Kange, who underscores the critical role of the troops to national security.
The Army Headquarters has initiated several welfare projects that will directly impact the lives of soldiers and their families. Your well-being is of utmost importance, and we shall continue to work tirelessly to provide you with the necessary resources and support to carry out your duties effectively.
In his remarks, the General Officer commanding 3 Division and Commander Operation Safe Haven highlight some of the achievements so far recorded by troops.
Our troops were successful in neutralizing several unrepentant bandits, dismantling local weapon manufacturing factories, and apprehending those involved in isolated killings, farm destruction, cattle rustling, night grazing, underage grazing, as well as cow poisoning, amongst other criminalities.
Also in attendance here is the Governor of Plateau State, who expresses his commitment to collaborating and complementing security agencies' efforts towards securing the state.
Be rest assured of my support and that of the good people of Plateau State. Your efforts towards restoring total peace to Plateau State in particular, and Nigeria in general. On this note, I'd like to particularly appreciate the troops of Operation Safe Haven. We appreciate your dedication. We appreciate your commitment. We appreciate your sacrifice.
The Chief of Army Staff, who was represented by Major General Mohammed Sani, Armored Commander Abuja, also had lunch with troops stationed in Yobe State. Besides the promise to take delivery of its helicopters and other combat enablements in 2024 to boost their operations, he also revealed that the Army would continue to boost the physical, moral and conceptual components of fighting power towards becoming a more efficient force.
In the coming year, the Nigerian Army expects to take delivery of its helicopters and other combat enablers that will see a better security environment developed across the country.
These luncheons with the troops will no doubt boost their morale, especially at this festive season when they ought to be spending their times with their families.
Well, that particular luncheon happened just before the attacks on Christmas Day. So it sort of gives you a sense of where we were up until the attacks happened. And of course, we're trying to pick up the pieces right now. We still have with us Group Captain Sadiq Shehu and Reverend Ladi Thompson on the program, just giving us an insight from their experience into all of this, and more importantly, finding solutions to this challenge. Group Captain, just before we went on that break, you were trying to make a point, and you were responding to what Reverend Ladi Thompson, some of the points he had raised. But the governor himself spoke about what people consider to be some sort of official backing, which we saw during the previous administration. And the questions are very obvious. How many arrests have been made? How many people have been prosecuted? We've seen how government, particularly in the previous administration, handled groups and leaders of groups that were considered to be a threat to the government and to security. We've seen how they were arrested, even out of the country, brought back, how the prosecution, the court cases have gone. So some will say the capability of security agencies to make arrests, to prosecute, is not in doubt, looking at those cases. But when it comes to this one, you hardly see arrests, you hardly see prosecution, you hardly see justice being done. So doesn't that for you lend credence to what even residents have described as collusion, which Reverend Ladi Thompson again seems to be reiterating?
Thank you very much. Now, when you talk about collusion, we have to look at the collusion being alluded in several aspects. Is it collusion by the federal government as a body or collusion by the military? To me, I will say as a retired military man, I am concerned when you talk about the military colluding. I have explained to you the modus operandi, the organizational structure of the armed forces, which I find, me being a Hausa man, even if I want to kill somebody from another tribe, as a commander, it will be difficult for me to carry, if I'm a company commander, to carry 300 of the people, Yorubas, Igbos, Ibibio, Christian, Muslim, and say, let's go and attack these people because of identity. I don't think I tend to take a step back when I hear such things. And I will also caution that such pronouncements, unless we can give. Now, when people say these stories, they provide concrete examples. But when you give examples, you have a name, you have a place, you have a date. If you have this information, I think it is something you can stand. And my concern is that some of these pronouncements are made by people in authority. An average man on the street, if he sees a soldier doing that, may not be able to, may not have the power. He's struggling with life, challenges. He doesn't have time to go and report or anything. But when we hear these things from a governor, or from a National Assembly member, or from somebody that can say is a member of the elite, I think you have a duty, if you are sure of these things, to carry them forward. You don't wait for such things to last several years or to last several months until when you come many years after or many months after, then you're talking about it. If I see a soldier, I am telling you, if I see a soldier breaking a law, I will take his name. I will look for his commander, even as a retired man. That's what I would do.
Well,
I will not just come on TV and say, and I do it.
Right. If I may come in,
Yes.
just to reiterate the part of a question which I'd like you to respond to. Bear in mind again that these are people that are directly affected by this. They live through this. Some of them have lost loved ones. Some of them have escaped just by a stroke of, well, let's say, luck or providence. So these are the people coming out to tell their stories. The part which was raised and has been raised time and again regarding arrests, prosecution, we've seen how our security agencies can work in other climes, in other instances. So for you, when you see that we've not heard of arrests, talk more of prosecution, something that we can hold on to and say, okay, 100 people died, but at least some people were arrested and are being prosecuted for that. What does that tell you?
Well, when we are talking, frankly, we should talk with statistics. I would not again align to this and that arrest and prosecution do not happen at all. Maybe the quantum, the number, the frequency is not enough. But I think if we look down the line, even this year, there were arrests, there were prosecution, there are court cases regarding the Plateau conflict that are currently in court. I don't want to be specific about any cases, but I know, and you are a journalist for yourself, you can find, even as we are talking, there are current cases. If you say the frequency based on the number of this is not enough, I might agree with that.
So, Group Captain,
but it will not be right.
So that we can also share the information with Nigerians, because it's important to lay them bare. We've heard of terrorist kingpins being arrested in the Northwest, some of them being killed. These stories are there, and I'm happy to show you these stories. But for the Plateau, which of the leaders, kingpins, have been arrested? Do you know about being arrested, prosecuted, that you can say, okay, at least one case exists?
Okay. In the clip that you just showed of the GOC, I have heard him saying that they busted a local arms factory. I am very conversant with the media. I scout the media every day as a professional interest. I know there are people that were arrested for this this thing. There was the issue of a senior officer that was killed somewhere, I think 2017 or 2018. I think the case is still in court because the people that killed him and dumped him is as I think they are in court. Not that I'm sure they are in court. There is a recent issue of somebody who killed somebody in the Plateau and fled to Lagos. This is not more than 2-3 weeks back. That man has been arrested. Is it by the police or the military? I don't know. So this is the point I am saying. You see, when we are discussing this, we need to be factual. We don't have to be emotional. We don't have to exaggerate. We really have a big problem. Even if it is one person that is killed, it is very, very unfortunate.
Right.
When we're talking of 450, but in looking at this, we don't have to sensationalize. Let's remain factual. If you tell me that only in the southeast or in the south that people are arrested, honest, I will not agree with that, and I've given you just a few examples. You asked for a few examples. Even in the clip, we have the GOC saying that.
Group Captain, my question was particularly regarding the heinous killings that we have seen, Mango, Barkin Ladi, the dozens and scores of people that have been killed, the arrests particularly made. I understand gun runners, people maybe colluding in the military. I'm talking about those directly responsible for these coordinated attacks, the kingpin. That is what that's what I'm referring to. But just so that we can expand this conversation, let me take this to Reverend Thompson as well, and we'll come back to you. Some go back as far as September 2001, the Just Crisis, where, about 1,000 people were killed. Recall that. Well, you said that it seems Nigerians have short memory, so maybe some people have forgotten. But that was a major issue, which we can, if we say we want to go back to the root of this, perhaps we need to go as far back as that, look at the trends from there. Recently, the video former Defense Minister T.Y. Danjuma resurfaced about a statement he made in 2018, which he has reiterated time and again, even up until last year, that it seems like people might need to start defending themselves because if you want to wait for the structure, which we have seen in these cases, well, we've seen how they have turned out to be. So, sorting out or defeating this hydra, he said it will take time, but the options available, the ones that have been proffered, do you think they are plausible?
No, the issue really is this. First of all, let me say to my friend that we will not trivialize the lives of people who are dying, not only in Plateau, but the amount of lives wasted all over the country, including that of young boys in the military. See, the days of clock sleeves, treaty of war, those days are gone. The new warheads, the new war forms that have been accredited all over the world, studied by security experts all over the world, talks about asymmetrical warfare, totally unconventional, talks about even media being a force multiplier. Now, what we're talking about here is very different from when we talk about the breakdown. I'll give you a good example. Let him go and find out how many times in those days would it be that the enemy will be located, then they'll be waiting for a signal. Everybody knows all over the world that the chain of command has been deconstructed to be able to handle this threat. So, and not only that, to solve this threat, the total aspect of it that the military can solve is not more than 60-something%. And then I want us to know something. Look, we need to be truthful to ourselves. Some years ago, if I remember very well, there was a massacre, I think, in 2018 in that same, was it Plateau State? Yes. When the McBan, what's his name again, Danladi Chiroma, made a very insensitive statement afterwards and said it was because of 300 cows that were rustled earlier. Of course, later on, they came back to come and deny a whole lot of stuff, but begin to join the dots. Look, from the global perspective, about 2-3 years ago, there came a list that was sent to Nigeria as the sponsors of terror. The richest sponsor of terror was located in Kaduna State. The government said it was going to have private prosecutions. Who in Nigeria till today has heard the names or the list of the sponsors of terror? Now, let us be very frank. I don't want us to say that the previous administration. What we're talking about here has been ongoing for many administrations. But I remember at one time I had a meeting with one of the former generals who was the president much earlier on, who said, oh, in his own time there was no this and that. I said to him, sir, I was in the field. We have mission fields. We take care of people. We take care of widows and orphans. So don't tell me stories of things that I have seen. And when people like us talk, we have to put it into consideration that the public is listening. So we only scratch the tip of the iceberg. Look, in that same Plateau State, go and find out. There was a house, one fellow whose name I will not call, because I spoke to the governor when the issue came out. Army uniforms were being sold in his house. It was meant to be picked up. If I go on into the other conversations that went up in higher places over that issue because we pursued it, you'll be shocked. So what are we talking about here? Now, the truth is this. If we want to face this thing, we must develop the will to realize that we need a coordination. There has to be a coordinate. We say it's a hydra. A hydra means it has different heads. Now, the beautiful thing about what we're saying here is this. The people who are doing all this are a minority. I'm talking about terror intelligentsia. They're a minority. One of the greatest advantages we have in Nigeria is our sheer size. We can't be swallowed in one piece. So if we're able to build consensus and face our systemic problems in Nigeria, honestly, in 3 months, we will wipe away this problem. Let me leave it at that.
But I'd like to also get your thoughts on what the former Minister of Defense said at that forum, a video that has resurfaced again, even though he said it some time back. And I think for a lot of people, it may resonate because it looks like something they can do now. Would you advise people to toe that path? And what do you see happening down the line if it looks like government isn't getting its act together, or it is taking time to get this consensus, political will, or what have you?
No. At no time should we ever encourage civilians to take the law into their hands. Trust me. At no time should we ever encourage it. What we really need to do is very simple. Don't forget that politicians only live for the next election. We need to gather statesmen, patriots, people who have something at stake and who have the courage. They are the ones who need to gather together and build consensus and raise the strength. That is, we need to, strengthen the will of Nigerians. And if at all we're going to go for gun laws, it has to be done legally. Because when it is done legally, then everybody has a home. But if we leave it to become a free-for-all, you're going to find out that the better organized end will win. You are dealing with the Hydra. That Hydra doesn't have only one military wing. Don't forget there were times in the past when the ISWAP was hunting down the Boko Haram and taking over. Don't forget that the one who terrorized Nigeria the most, the Nigerian army, never located him. When ISWAP gave him a notice to quit as head of Boko Haram, it took ISWAP only about 4 days to locate him and neutralize him, even though he did not detonate the bomb and, he didn't go alone. So please, in other countries, people realize that the trust of the public, the coming together of the people to have a unified will, a country that shows that it cares for the value, the life value of its citizens, is the country that will beat this threat. Because if we continue with this piecemeal thing here and there, you are dealing with an opportunistic thing. The enemy is opportunistic. It is extremely intelligent. And the way we're going about it, what I feel, look, people like us in our sisters, we've seen the best of Nigeria, as it were. It's very unfair to look at the younger generations and then subject them to something that you know is not going to lead anywhere. Right now, what is happening is that there's an older generation that is taking away the future of the younger generation. And that's what's really going on. So we'll either build consensus, get patriots and statesmen, face systemic problems, put together the architecture of thought that can handle this issue once and for all, and also ensure that the media aspect too is properly put together, because these people have been known to exploit everything. Now, even in the army, don't forget that when the Nigerian army was put together, when they came from the West African Frontier Force, the British put in between us the divide and rule interesting thing. So even within the army, the divide and rule foundation that we had from independence was, even though the esprit de corps was quite strong for some years, but when it came to promotions, this and that. Now, can you imagine an intelligent army, an intelligent enemy that is more sophisticated now, who now wants to start dividing and start fracturing the army? Is he going to carry a placard on his head? That's why I'm saying that the architecture of thought required for this is not something that will be found in Clausewitz's Trinity of War or old textbooks or military that nobody, no other country of the world is looking at anymore. So please, let us give value to the lives of the people who are dying.
Absolutely. And that is why we'll keep on this. I want to ask you, so what is the end game for the Hydra, as you described it? What is the need for Hydra? Maybe that will help people understand what needs to be done. But let me just toss this over to Nyota in our Abuja studio as we wind down this conversation. Nyota.
Thank you, Kayode. I'll start off with you, Reverend Thompson, in winding down. There's a statement you made about coming to a consensus. You've said you made it like twice in the last few minutes, but there was something else you said before that. You said at no time should the civilians be encouraged to defend themselves. Indeed, in talking about that, yesterday we had a guest who talked about the need for personnel and funding. How do we resolve that, even in coming to a consensus? How do we resolve that matter of personnel? The army, the military is overstretched. The Chief of Army Staff talks about 50,000 personnel spread across the country. They are really stretched. That's different from their peacekeeping duties they have outside the shores of Nigeria. How do we resolve that matter of personnel?
Thank you very much for helping to helping us to make this a bit more accurate. Now the idea is this: we're not asking the civilian not to defend himself or herself, but what we're asking is this: is that don't let it be illegal. Don't allow. Okay, look at Plateau State, for instance. Now, all the vigilantes, most of the people killed this time around were vigilantes. What are they using? Pump action, at best pump action. A lot of low velocity kinetics. The people who came in on motorcycles, 300, sometimes up to 300, to come and encircle the villages. Go and ask about the caliber of weaponry they were carrying. The logistics behind that. Anybody who understands that you don't just grab such weapons in the streets knows that there's a lot of intelligence behind them. So what we're saying is this: for the Nigerian citizen who has to defend himself, let us make sure that we build consensus for the will to make sure that it is legal for you to purchase the items you need. Look, let's not deceive ourselves about these things. These things have been going on for 20-something, if not much more, odd years. So there comes a time. Like I said, the governor of Plateau State, I commend him. I didn't even expect him to speak that much. Because anybody who really understands the situation, reading in between what he has said, would realize that, is this man, does he really want to continue as a politician? Because it seems as if he cares for his people. Okay? So I would rather say that the building of consensus should be left to statesmen, patriots, people who don't have any elections at stake. And part of what we need to do is to address the systemic problems. Or else you'll find out that one person, one mole in the corridors of power, one wrong influence somewhere, a lot of devastation will always continue to occur.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Thompson. Group Captain Sadiq Show, as we wind down here now, systemic problems. How do we resolve the systemic problems? Our men and women are really stretched, and they are your brothers in arms. They are really stretched. But how do we resolve those systemic problems? Because one of our viewers actually sent a message yesterday that we're dealing. It looks as if everybody's avoiding the root cause of these matters. How do we resolve these matters once and for all?
It's governance and security.
Oh boy, oh boy. Well, Group Captain Show, we're still not getting you clearly. But let me take this back to Reverend Thompson. These systemic problems, there's a need to, if we go looking at the systemic problems, we might not finish the program today, but root causes. So how do we deal with these low-hanging fruits real quick? If you can make that in like 1 minute, we'll go.
Very low hanging fruits. I remember when I went to Respect Rayom in 2000, was it? I went to Rayom when David Silas, a footballer, died, a very popular footballer. Now, when I listened and I checked what was going on, as far early as then in 2001 was the time we told Plateau State that, oh, the Hydra has come. Now, one thing I saw that helped the Hydra is this. In the response in Plateau State, there's a cohesion that needs to be between the Biroms, who are the majority, the Taroks, there's so many sub-tribes within the Plateau that right now I would advise them that the first thing that needs to happen is this: all differences have to be buried. And there must be a coming together, whether you are a minority or you're a majority, does not matter. There needs to have a coming together of all who are in the Plateau. And then when they have come together and the consensus is built, they need to now go for low-hanging fruits. We'll talk about all those things later. And these things are not really things that need public discourse anymore after 20 years of facing the same problem again and again.
Thank you so much, Group Reverend Laddie Thompson, who's a strategic security researcher and security consultant with the Nonviolence Advocacy Network in Canada. Thank you for coming on the show. We also had retired Group Captain Sadiq Shehu, whom we lost along the way, security sector reform and defense expert. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts this morning. Sunrise Daily will be back in a moment. Please stay with us.